So I'm here with Hunter Newby, who's the CEO of Allied Fiber and a familiar face to folks in the data center and telecom community in the New York area. Hunter, thanks for spending some time with us.
Thank you, Rich.
So for our readers who may not know a lot about Allied Fiber, I was hoping maybe you could give us a quick overview of what you guys do.
Sure. We're a carrier-neutral infrastructure provider of communications, fiber, co-location service on a distributed basis. We work with Norfolk Southern Railroad to build out dark fiber and carrier-neutral colo along their rights-of-way in the U.S.
So talk a little bit, we've talked before about how modular data centers could be a little bit of a game changer in terms of geography and the way that Allied Fiber is kind of looking at it.
Yep.
How does modularity fit with what you guys are doing?
Well, modularity actually fits in the sense of a smaller increment to build for data center space, but also modular in terms of the way IO deploys their product also means it could be distributed. So there's really two things at work, and in order for a data center to exist in the first place, there needs to be fiber, and ample fiber is good. Neutral fiber is obviously better instead of carrier owned and having a single provider to a data center which doesn't provide a competitive nature in the lit service. So we see modular, particularly in the way that IO deploys with their IO Anywhere product, as a data center product that can be physically distributed along a system like Allied Fibers, where we have access points on an incremental basis, basically already pre-designed every 3,000 feet, and that means that wherever there's data center space required, compute power required along the route, an IO Anywhere mod could be deployed. That type of deployment mechanism and product never existed before. There really isn't a nationwide infrastructure that could be interconnected to in this way, but the demand exists largely from mobile data, distributed cloud, obviously for cloud apps that exist within the mobile world, like video, for example, which is very bandwidth intensive, backhauls very problematic, a lot of bottlenecks. So that, looking at it from a sort of national scale, but then even on a local level, you have local institutions, enterprises, hospitals, what have you. They have a lot of client records and data storage requirements and CPU cycles of processing that they need in their local area for a variety of different reasons. And there just aren't any data centers out there for them. There are no nationwide commercially operated data center operators, or the REITs, or just the operators themselves that have an incremental product. They may build modular space inside larger data centers in the metros, right, or maybe outside of the metros, but they don't have this unit, this incremental unit concept that could just be placed almost like the analogy I make is the Lego block on a Lego pad. You can basically put it wherever you need to. As long as that follows the fiber route, you're in business.
So this whole view of distributed modularity and some of the use cases you've talked about, what's your sense of the timetable? When are we going to start to see some of this come to fruition, become a reality?
It's all happening now. It's really, you could be here in the Edison facility for IO and see what they're doing with modular data center construction inside a very large building. So that's occurring. This works. The physical distribution of the computing power in data centers that are modular really occurs when the fiber exists to connect it to. Before that, you can't put it out there in the field. It just won't work without access to the fiber. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, historically here in the United States and in other places that have very large geographies, data centers are clustered around metros because that's where the historical independent carrier neutral dark fiber has existed.
Right.
In metros. Why? Because that's where the big city is, that's where the demand is, and you can build there. And where one went, two went, three went, and you have cities like New York and New Jersey in the metro area where there are a multiplicity of different competing dark fiber providers. But once you leave this area, there aren't any, and that's where the real frontier is. That's where the rural requirements are for broadband. That's where the wireless backhaul requirements are, which is a huge bottleneck in the country for LTE deployment.
Right.
And quite frankly as well, there are a lot of people out there, there are a lot of businesses out there, there are a lot of hospitals out there, a lot of schools. They all need computing power too. They shouldn't have to come all the way into the metro area. They need it where they are. So the demand exists today. The physical ability to deploy is what we're working on. It's part of what Allied Fiber is working on with our strategy and our physical design and our process of deploying. There are also regional fiber networks that exist out there today that modular data centers could be deployed on a FiberLight or a FiberTech or someone like that. And that's just in this sort of generic geography of the United States. There are other regions as well. There's other providers. But you sort of have to find them, and then you have to find where there's available land and power. So it becomes a real infrastructure development project to manage. Enterprises typically don't want to do it. The folks that sell servers don't want to do it either. You know, the HPs and the Dells, although they have been successful in selling some containers, I think their whole world would open up largely if there were docking stations pre-built that sat on fiber with land and power and water that they could just deploy a container with servers to that would suit the needs of their enterprise clients. That infrastructure doesn't exist either. That company doesn't exist yet, and it needs to in order to sort of scale this whole thing. Again, given our geography, some problems, but it's already occurring, Rich. It's coming together rather slowly due to our size and the capital requirements to meet the demand.
Right. So Hunter, tell us a little bit about, Allied Fiber's routes, the geographies you're looking at. Well, where are you at, and what are your ambitions?
Sure. As I mentioned early on, we have an agreement with Norfolk Southern Railroad, so our system follows the railroad rights of way. We've been building new duct in certain segments for the past couple of years. We actually did a project in Middle Georgia for about 160 miles of fiber, which was completed in February of this year, which is 2012. We're going to look to expand that now in Middle Georgia up to Atlanta and down to Jacksonville. We have needs for wireless backhaul for our clients to intercept our fiber route, to bring them to those cities. There's also 2 new submarine cables coming into Jacksonville. There's a lot of demand. It's happening countrywide, but we stick to the right-of-way that we've chosen, and we stick to our model. We're not a carrier. We don't sell lead services, and we don't build off the right-of-way, but for getting into the major carrier hotels and peering points throughout the U.S. So it's a long process. It revolves around getting anchor tenants to sign up to justify the cost of the build. We're aggregating lots of different network operators. Some folks need only one pair of fibers. Other folks need multiple ribbons. And all of them are sitting on the sidelines not building what we're building because they no longer can afford to. So they're sort of waiting for us, unfortunately. But we are making progress, so there's benefit to that for all of us.
Okay, Hunter. Listen, thanks so much for taking a few minutes to fill us in on Allied Fiber.
Thank you, Rich.